Hello everyone, this is Ben from GP Adventures and the Hobby Shop Dungeon. And today I would like to talk to you about the Lake Geneva playstyle. One aspect of the game in play, as it was experienced by people in 1974 and on, was the verbal aspect of the description of the dungeon and how you would have a member of the party a player who would be actually the mapper for the party. That is, the DM would describe what the party would see, what the dimensions of the rooms would be, how long the corridors would be, and so on. And this player would keep track of the progression of the group. Now, in the modern versions of the game, we have all sorts of gizmos that kind of replace this. Like whether we're projecting pictures on a TV set with Fog of War, or we are using Dwarven Forge for a 3D representation of the dungeon and whatnot, right? Um, None of these things are bad in themselves. I'm using Dwarven Forge and Fog of War stuff myself. This is something that came about, that was emphasized by the third edition of the game and on, with the tactical aspect, with 5 footsteps and so on, which kind of imply that you had a bird's eye view of the dungeon, right, in the first place. So when people have been introduced to the Dungeons and Dragons game via those editions or variants and whatnot, they're often very curious about how to describe the dungeon, how to map it, and how that all works because they've never experienced it. So I'm going to try to give you a little primer on this, right? What I'm going to do is basically I'm going to approach it in a practical manner. First, I'm going to tell you the basics, in a laid back manner, and then I'm just going to take one of my maps, right, from a dungeon that we published, like at least we previewed with Honest Gygax, right, for GP Adventures, and that's the halls of the Big Arcane. And I'm just gonna describe it as if a party was exploring it, right? Assuming the party's choices, and then you're gonna see how that will work. Anyway, let's get to the basics here. All right, so when you're describing a dungeon or an environment of any type, what you need to remind yourself of as a DM is that you're in effect serving as the eyes and ears and senses of the player characters as they explore that environment. What that means is that you need to convey not only that the dimensions of a room and the length of a corridor and whatnot, but you need to give an impression that the player characters are in the place, right? That can take any beyond conveying basic information that can take many different shape and forms, right? From hearing sounds to how wet the ground feels and whatnot. All right. So you sprinkle the information that's relevant to the mapper as you do this, right? So from there, you're gonna have different type of descriptions in a dungeon. You're gonna describe rooms or corridors or caverns and stuff like that, right? For rooms, the important thing to remember is like first you give the basic dimension of the room, and shape, right? Let's say it's a square room, 30 by 30, right? From there, you describe what type of openings exist and where they are. So that means that you might say there's a door right in the middle of the northern wall, right? Or uh, on the western wall, which is 30 feet wide, you can see there's a door on the 10 feet southern segment of the wall, and so on, right? Okay. As you describe corridors, it's important to remain progressive, right? What you want to do, because you need to remember that there are light sources and stuff like that, right? So you will say to the players what they see as they come by it. You don't say, "Oh, you have 100 foot corridor." They can't see that, right? So you need to remind yourself you are in the situation serving as their eyes, right? And it's much easier to tell them what they see when they get to it, right? Okay. So that's about it about corridors as well. Oh, and as they go down, basically, you say, okay, you go down, eastward, 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet. Oh, there's a door here, 30 feet down, like on the northern wall of the corridor. Right? Okay, then they can investigate or go down and so on. All right. So, or there's a pit trap or whatever. And the third type of roughly, I mean, I'm going fast here. So the third type of thing, that's all that is tunnels. Tunnels are more twisted, and the shapes of rooms are really, really weird, and so on. So what you want there is generally have some type of notepad or means to do a quick sketch to show the rough shape of a room and dimensions. Say you're in a huge cavern, it's 80 feet wide, you know, and so on. All right. So these are the very, very basic. But I think that the best way is to go directly to the practical example. So we'll get to this. All right, so the party just climbed down a shaft that is about 20 feet wide, round, going down about, say, 100 feet into the ground. So they went down with ropes, and so on, right? And then you tell them, after a while climbing down, you can feel that the shaft is opening up in a larger space. Not much larger. Are you going down and stuff? Yes, we go down. Imagine that the room, like I'm gonna skip in general like the monsters and whatnot, right? But okay, so you go down this space and you find that you touch ground in a 30 by 30 room, 30 feet by 30 feet. The walls are carved from stone, but roughly so. You can still see the marks of chisel all over the surfaces, the stone surfaces, and the angles are not quite neat. In the middle of the northern wall of this 30 by 30 room, you can see a door that is made of wood, probably oak, with some iron hinges. And you can see that the door is well manufactured. It's not quite fitting the opening that was carved in the stone. What do you do? Right? So now they might search the room, they might check the walls to see if there are secret passages and all that. Let's just go directly. Let's say they choose the door, right? Okay. So you check the door, and after pulling on it, you can relatively easily opening it. But as you open it, you hear a slight that does not seem to have echoed beyond. What do you like? Now you tell them again. What do? You increase the tension and stuff like that, right? So we open the door. Right? Okay, 10 feet. You find yourself in a corridor, or I should say rather an alcove of 10 feet by 10 feet. But this alcove directly opens up into a corridor. Right in front of you, you have another opening that goes 10 feet deep with another door right in front of you on the northern part. And the corridor itself goes east or west. What do you do? Right? Let's say they go north. Okay? As you as you go through the corridor to access the 10 by 10 alcove with the door right in front of you, what you see is that on the left side, that is west, with the illumination of your torch, you can see that the corridor, after just 10 feet, turns sharply in a northwest direction, diagonal. It goes farther from there, and you can see you can see in the darkness beyond. And on the west side, you can see that it goes down 20 feet, and then you have openings in the corridor, 10 feet wide, north and south. But then the corridor goes on towards the east. Okay. No, we go to the door to the north. Okay. So you go to the door to the north. Check it out. There's no trap, blah, 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 right? Okay. You open the door. You find yourself in a 10 by 10 alcove again. And this time, the 10 by 10 alcove opens up. Like, there is no wall on the eastern side. And it opens up immediately on a 20 by 30 room. It is 20 feet wide, right, on the east-west axis, and 30 foot long on the north-south axis. And as you enter the room, you can see there's a table here with various broken glass and detritus and like the piles of crap in the corner and all that. And there's a bunch of goblins and all that. Fight ensues, blah blah. Goblins. Yeah. Well. All right. When the fight is over, you can see that there's a door in this room that is on the eastern wall, the 30-foot long eastern wall, on the northernmost corner, on the northern side of the wall. It is this door is 10 foot wide, and there are no other elements to be seen. Right? So they might tell you, okay, well, okay, we're gonna search and stuff. We're gonna search the room, blah blah blah. Okay. In the end, well, we're gonna take the door towards the east. Okay. So you open the door towards the east, and you see a corridor going eastward. What do you know? We go down the corridor. The corridor is 10 foot wide and goes on 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet, 40 feet. The corridor is turning southward. What do you do? We go down. You go down 10 feet. The corridor is turning again, this time westward. What do you do? Okay, we go down 10 feet. The corridor opens up on the south into a 20 by 20 room. You can't see well the features from here. Where we go and and by the way, from the spot you're standing in here, just you can see that the corridor goes on only 30 feet to the dead end, and just after the opening on the 20 by 20 room, there's another opening 10 feet wide into another corridor. What do you know? Well, okay, we go to the 20 by 20 room. You enter the 20 by 20 room by its northern side, right? And since it's 20 by 20, the opening where you enter the room is the western side of the northern wall. Right in front of you, on the southern wall, there's a door. Right? Southern wall, western side. And then, directly on your left, on the eastern wall, northern side, there's a door as well. Oh, okay. Well, we open the door. Okay. We open the door on the eastern side. Well, you find a room, and this room has a strange shape. It is actually a trapezoid. That is on the. It is 20 foot wide on the north-south axis. It is a 30 foot long from your side, and the door, that is the western side, right? And the door where you are is in the middle of this 30 foot space. But on the other side, right, the room, the eastern wall of the room is only 10 foot wide from the 20 foot wide southern wall. And then the northern wall, what would be the northern wall, is actually a diagonal wall that links everything, right? So it's basically semi-rectangular on your right side and trapezoidal, like a diagonal wall on your left. Okay, we enter the space, search it, blah blah blah. There's no opening in this room whatsoever. Okay, we're gonna try the southern wall of the 20 by 20 room. Okay, the southern door, sorry. Well, you open it, and you find yourself in a corridor. You look down. You can see a door right in front of you on the southern wall of the corridor. And what do? Like the corridor is going east-west, right? And now maybe the mapper might notice that this is actually the same wall, the same corridor that was mentioned before at the very beginning. But okay, you shouldn't mention it. You should let them figure it out. Okay, so we go down the corridor, and we're gonna go east, right? We're gonna ignore the door on the southern wall and just go east. Right? Okay, so 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet. At any point, the players can interrupt you and say, we check the walls, we search for traps as we go on the corridor and so on, right? Okay, so 30 feet, 40 feet, 50 feet, 60 feet, 70 feet. The corridor turns, like the corridors becomes a T intersection. It goes on eastward from where you are, and there's a branch that goes north, 10 foot wide. And you can see with the light torch, after 10 feet down this corridor, there are steps that go down. Right? Okay, we're gonna take the northern passage. You go down the stairs, and after about 20 feet going down the stairs, the corridor still goes north, and you go 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet, 40 feet. The corridor turns eastward. What do? We go on 10 feet, 20 feet. The corridor turns south. And it's just turns south for 10 feet and then turns again eastward. Okay, so we go down. Boom. There's a plate and there's a swinging trap that gets you, right? And so on, right? So I guess we're gonna stop here because I've gone far enough. But that's really the basics of it. Okay. So from there, the players can interrupt whenever they want. They can ask you questions. How does it feel like? You can, you should sprinkle, the noises and the impressions and all that as you go on. But that's basically the idea of it. Now, I'm gonna show you the map and the path that was taken, and from there we're gonna do some additional commentary and how you can get there and basically experiment with this.
Now, here we see level 1 of the Haunted Halls of the Beggar King of GP Adventures. And now we are focusing on the southern part of this map where our exploration took place. Here is what happens when I highlight the path taken by the party. And here is that specific section blown up so you can see the detail. On your notepad, it should look a little bit like this.
Now here we have the essential elements of description of a dungeon. How to describe a room, how to describe a corridor, how to insert elements of decor and ambience inside the descriptions, right? My description was obviously a little dry, and I chose deliberately to do it unprepared, so I wouldn't be scripted. And we might have to do a short video with an actual party of players in front of me while I describe an environment verbally, So that would be an even better example for you guys to see it in action. Now, this type of play with a mapper and verbal descriptions is interesting on multiple levels. Uh, in terms of challenge, the mapping can become increasingly complicated, and DMs out there are encouraged to start simple with the first levels of their dungeons and get increasingly complicated in the design of their levels. For instance, the first levels, can have square rooms, neatly angled corridors that are easy to track, and so on. Once you get to deeper levels, you can start introducing curves in the corridors, round rooms, hexagonal rooms, triangular rooms. Not all, not all perfect triangles. Uh, and other oddly shaped rooms, right? Then you can start introducing slanting passages that make you think you're still on the same level, but you change levels in the dungeon. You can start introducing blocks of stone, 10 by 10, 20 by 20, 40 by 40 feet, that move around and block some rooms and some corridors and make you think you're in a completely different area of the dungeon, and suddenly your map is not accurate. You can have then the introduction of magic and twisters, like things that really screw with your mapping, like rooms that teleport the party at the other side of the dungeon. Uh, teleporters like that. Rooms that rotate and all sorts of tricks and on and on. But these elements, I would advise dungeon masters to check out the Marmoral Tomb that's going to come out later this year to find out more about those, right? Because the dungeon is going to be filled with kind of tricks like this that might be fun to meet in a classic modern exploration with the Veleda and all that. But if you're using that kind of verbal description, that becomes a challenge of itself, and that becomes extremely interesting. And I guess a Lake Geneva type dungeon wouldn't be a dungeon if you didn't have those kinds of twists to it. All right. So my last advice is to take your time, and before running games verbally like that, you might just try to record yourself, to take a map like I just did, and describe what you're seeing, you know, describe the rooms and imagine the party moving around, and record yourself and try to see if that you're convincing. And the more you use these types of descriptions, the more they become second nature. It's a bit like doing bicycle, right? They come back easily. If you never done it before, don't worry. You will hesitate at first, but it's gonna come better. Now, what's next? We haven't talked about the mapping on the side of the players, right? There are different ways to map. You can map like you just saw with a graph paper and some amount of detail like a normal dungeon map, or you can use trail maps, which are much more simplified. Or you can use memory and just have a kind of photographic memory, like Rob Kuntz had when he was exploring Castle Griog. Uh, I'm not sure how we're gonna explore that in the future videos, but I hope we will. At least that's a start. Like I wanted to make a video about the mapping, and let me know what you think. You know, comment and let me know what you'd like to see next, and so on. Right. So I hope that you found this video interesting, and see you later for more about Lake Geneva style games and the Marmoral Tomb and other elements of old school gaming and GP adventures game design. Bye bye.